Hey everyone, it's Zach Wright, founder of Grapevine Software. We are coming back with the Future of Work weekly report for this week. And for people who are new to this channel, the Future of Work weekly report is where we talk about everything that's happening in the realms of future of work. So flexibility, remote, hybrid, productivity, AI, we're going to be talking about it. And today we're going to be looking at a Forbes article. It was published earlier this week, and the title is called Employee Retention and Career Growth in a Remote First World. Now, last week we talked about the CEO of Amazon requiring Amazon workers back into the office 5 days a week. So this isn't as flashy, but it is very, very, very important and possibly related to how Andy Jassy could have taken this approach with the Amazon workers. Now, we're not going to be talking about Amazon this week, but what we are going to be talking about is this article. And what you'll hear a lot is Singapore. So a lot of this article is focused on Singapore, but that's because they were very much office oriented and they've been able to adapt, and they don't see as many RTOs or return to office mandates as we see over here in the United States or elsewhere. And so that's why I wanted to talk about this. So we'll be talking about what the article specifically says, and then I'm going to dive into how we can kind of globalize this and take it beyond just Singapore and why this article is important as we learn to adapt the new landscape of the future of work. So let's go ahead and do what we do all the time and start with highlight number one. Highlight number one here is the shift to remote work in Singapore. The pandemic forced Singapore to embrace remote work, transforming a culture that once prioritized physical office presence. While remote work has improved work-life balance and job satisfaction, it raises new challenges in employee retention and career advancement. Now, one of the things that we want to call out here is that before the pandemic, remote work was very rare in Singapore, but it's now becoming a permanent feature of the employee landscape. And I think that that's something that we can actually think about here in the United States. It's not about how do we go back to before the pandemic, but how do we adapt and hear what the people are saying about what has happened during the pandemic and post-pandemic, where people want that flexibility. They want the ability to choose where they work, when they work, how they work. Now, when their work is a little bit tricky because you want to make sure that people aren't slowing you down, but you can put in guidelines for that. Now, one of the things that I mentioned that we're going to do in this episode is we're going to be going through Grapevine's thoughts or my thoughts. And so what we see here is that Singapore's experience is going to highlight the universal truth. And that's what we've kind of already said, but the shift to remote work or flexible work is here to stay. And so globally, companies that implement flexible, remote-friendly policies report higher employee satisfaction and retention. Now, I'm not going to talk about Grapevine, our virtual office platform, too much, but I mean, being able to centralize communication and making that critical information accessible to distributed teams, that's going to enhance productivity and employee engagement. And it kind of takes away from some of those challenges. That's why we are building Grapevine. And we're only going to continue to get better at what we're trying to accomplish with our vision and mission. And that's just something to think about here, is that if a company or if a country like Singapore has been able to go from physical office presence whenever that was very much prioritized and focused on, and status was given with it, whenever they can adapt, that shows us that we can too. All right, let's go ahead and go to highlight number two. I'm going to try to keep this video short. So the career progression dilemma. Now I've heard this a lot, and it's not just like, I mean, I guess in other words, you can say proximity bias in a sense, and the way that they talk about it in this article is no different. But let's look at the key insight that we took away from this article. So many remote workers in Singapore worry about limited in-person interaction, which can reduce their visibility and chances for promotions. Companies must develop new ways to evaluate and promote remote employees to prevent them from being overlooked. And so we have to think about this new world. And this is what I was saying before. If we constantly think about how can we go back to normal, how can we go back to traditional, how can we go back to before the pandemic, then we're not actually going to make progress in making work better for everyone. This is an opportunity. This is an inflection point that we have. This is unique because as a world, globally speaking, we experience something all at once, all at the same time. And so whenever something happens like that, it gives us this unique opportunity to shift or shake things up and grab those people who are pioneers. Future of work pioneers is what I call them. It allows us to build this movement towards a better working world, which is more flexible, it's more hybrid, it's more work-life balance. I don't like necessarily using the word work-life balance because I'm a workaholic, but it's work-life harmony. It's being able to pick up. So for example, just to, before we continue on this highlight, for example, before I would have to wait until the end of the day to go get my haircut. This is a simple thing. Or I would have to miss work to or half day to go into the office or to the doctor's appointment. This morning my wife and I went to a doctor's appointment. And so before I would have had to put in PTO or request PTO or talk to someone and say, "Hey, I'm going to be out of the office. Do I need to submit something?" And then they would say yes or no. Some people were okay with it. But just that ability, not being able to pick up and go, or let's say that your child is sick in school and you need to go pick them up because it's before their driving age, right? And so now you go pick them up. Some people can look at that and say, "Oh, that's a bad thing." I remember whenever I used to work in the office 100%, and it always felt like somebody had an excuse to go somewhere. But imagine if we took a step beyond that and we said, you know what, as long as your work is getting done, you're communicating with the team, everybody knows where you are on your projects or the things that you have to participate in or you're responsible for, and you're not slowing anybody down, it doesn't really matter. You don't have to tell us. You don't have to take PTO. If you want to go get your haircut, go get your haircut. If you want to finish the rest of the day at a coffee shop, go ahead and do that. If you want to come into the office, do that. That's that flexibility that we're talking about. And that's what we're talking about here. But I kind of digress here because we're talking about the career progression dilemma. But we can kind of put it together here where whenever we allow people to do that, we also have to structurally think about how do we make sure that these people are still involved, right? And so let's just see what they said here. So remote workers often feel less visible to supervisors, leading to fears of being bypassed for career opportunities. So think about this, a tool like Grapevine, it is very social, but it's also where you can find information, you can share important updates, and you can find it for later. But we also have employee profiles, and just imagine being able to see somebody interact back and forth, even sharing information asynchronously. Now you know that this person is working, they're staying top of mind because they're on the Grapevine virtual office platform and they're communicating back and forth, they're commenting, they're posting, they're sharing, whatever it is, but they're visible. And so that makes it a little bit more difficult to not see them or see them as prevalent. And so what we have to think about here is how can we not only make them visible, but how can we structure an approach to ensure that they understand what it would take to be a remote worker or a hybrid worker and still be prevalent, still be at the minds of their manager even if they're not coming into the office, right? And so you have to have that clarity. And to me, this is how I always say it. I know that there's certain people out there that say that they don't like one-on-ones. I will always have a one-on-one with my employees, with my peers, whatever the case is. I'm always going to have one-on-ones because I think that that's how we can connect. And it's more than just one-on-ones, because the one-on-ones that I conduct, there's always an element of personal conversation. Now, I'm not asking them to share their life if they don't want to, but what I am doing is I'm having a conversation, specifically getting to understand and know that person. And then once we segue into the actual work to be done conversation, we have an agenda. We talk about what we're going to go over. We go over it. We get it. Like, it's not necessarily status reports, but it's to understand where they are in that project, in that initiative, in that rollout, or whatever it is that needs to be done and shared and completed. We'll talk about it. And then I'll ask if they have any roadblocks, if there's anything that I can help with. Is anybody giving them trouble? Do we need to step in? Whatever the case is, that's what I'm talking about. That's why a 101 is so important. And then as you have these one-on-ones, maybe it's monthly, maybe it's quarterly, you factor in a career development plan. And I have to shout out Mercy Noah and Louise Lell from, I think I said her last name right, from Kumu, because they, and Harika Hayes, they had this tight-knit program on career development plans. We were 100% remote. I actually never felt overlooked or unheard or unseen, because I was so included in all of these elements. And then they would do a great job. They were in HR. They would do a great job of pushing on the managers to make sure that they're having the conversations with their teams on the career development plans. And in those career development plans, it was very simple. It was just a one-page or a one-slide PowerPoint. And in that slide, it had a template. Had my name, had my position, how long I had been here, last promotion. And then over here, it was like strengths, areas to improve, and then goals. And then it was like what was my responsibilities right now. And so basically what we would do is we would take that career development plan and we would say, okay, this is where I want to be. And then the manager and I would work together and say, okay, if you want to be here, this is what you have to do. And then this is the timeline that we can think about bringing this up. And so what we would do is we would filter that into our one-on-ones every quarter, every month. It just depends on who that person is and how, what timeline there is for that promotion. And then you have to follow through too. So that's the other thing. But the career development plan here is so important. And then the structure of the one-on-ones and the structure of HR pushing on the manager to make sure that this is something that we're focused on. And that was my experience at the last company. We're trying to build certain elements of that in Grapevine. That'll be a little bit later on. But those are key. Those are table stakes. Now, on top of that, I ran the OKR program at Kumu. And so what we would do is we would make sure that every goal that we created was attached to our goal as the company. We would break that company goal down into executive leadership goals. Then the leadership team would connect their objectives to a key result from the executive. And then it would go down to the team, go down to the individual, so on and so forth. This also has to be discussed in your one-on-ones. And the reason that I'm bringing up this methodology and these certain areas and not continuing on to highlight number 3 just yet is because this is what we have to do to be able to have that clear path to career progression dilemma. Now, this is my take on it. There's other people who are much more experienced and knowledgeable on this, but this is how I've seen it done. This is how I like to do it. And it's actually very simple. But so with the OKRs, now you have these goals, and you can do it with KPIs, you can do it with OKRs and KPIs, you can do it with SMART goals, whatever jobs to be done, whatever you like to do or what you use in your company. do this and manage to performance. And when you manage to performance, you add that layer of the career development plan, and then you add the layer of the one-on-ones. There is no way, whether that person is working in the office 100%, remote 100%, or a mixture of both, or they're traveling back and forth, they are not going to feel like they are not seen, like they are not heard. They're going to feel like they understand what needs to be executed to get to this next level. They understand that there is growth potential in their jobs. And since they're helping create the career development plan, they are making it match their growth need strength. I've talked about this before. It's the job characteristics model. You can look it up. But that growth need strength is so important for retention because it has to match that specific employee's thoughts of growth at the company. And if it doesn't match that, then they're more likely to leave that company, right? Which is a perfect segue into highlight number 3, which is retention and flexibility. So I've done my little rant. I'll try to keep it on script here. So flexibility has become a double-edged sword. While it leads to higher job satisfaction and lower turnover, the lack of clear progression or clear career progression in remote work can drive employees to seek opportunities elsewhere. They say remote work increases job satisfaction, but may drive turnover if employees don't see career growth plans or opportunities. Now, I didn't honestly plan that, but that was perfect for growth needs strengths and then what we already talked about, right? So the power of flexibility is that it is a retention tool, but opposed to just being in the office where you can kind of get by with certain things, you need to have this well thought out structured plan. And if you kind of piece together the theme of what I was explaining, it's not actually just on that person's manager. It's on the manager of the person. It's on the person themselves. It's on the team. It's on the company, and it's on HR. All of these things, whenever they say it takes a village, that's what they mean. You can't just have this manager be that person's support system. It has to come from all over. And if you don't have a tool like Grapevine to make it so easy to stay connected, whether you're in the office or not, or you're hybrid, or you're 100% remote organization, then you need to have something like this, right? And so let's just see what we have here. Yeah. So they say it's a tool for retention, but companies must pair it with clear pathways for career growth. And then I talk about Grapevine right here in my comments. So I say Grapevine supports this by streamlining internal communications, making it easier for employees to stay aligned with company goals and connect with mentors. Because in our platform, if somebody wants to be a mentor, you can actually just create a tag in your profile as mentor. And then I can go into our employee directory, type mentor, and reach out to that person. So I'll show you that maybe in a short video that we'll share later. But that's what we have to think about here is how do we provide that clear career progression? And how do we leverage flexibility as a tool, but keep that structure even though we're not in the office and overcome the proximity bias? It's all these little pieces that we're talking about, putting them together. All right, highlight number 4 is a little bit more difficult. So gender dynamics in remote work. Female remote workers in Singapore report higher engagement and productivity than their male counterparts. However, the blurred lines between work and personal life increase the risk of burnout, requiring companies to be mindful of this balance. And they say women in remote roles tend to report higher engagement, but they have that risk of burnout too. So there's certain things, and this is what I actually love about remote work. I mean, there's tons of things, but as I was reading this article, it brought clarity around with remote work. What we're actually doing is we're studying the organizations and how they operate. We're studying different demographics, different cultures, different methodologies for working. And what we're doing through this is that experimentation is telling us what is working, what could be better, how can we improve this. This is the whole science of work happening right now. This is that inflection point that I'm talking about. We all experience this globally, and now we can choose how to move forward. Some people want to take us back. Some people want to move us forward. We're in the category of wanting to move forward, and not just move forward, but take what we didn't do whenever we had that traditional way of working 9 to 5 in the office and adapt it into this future of work that allows people to have more flexibility, not just for flexibility's sake, but to be able to have higher engagement in their organizations, to be able to have higher productivity in their organizations, to help them have a better work-life harmony in these situations, to even take it to the next level and improve how we conduct one-on-ones, conduct meetings, have more asynchronous meetings or updates. There's so many different things that we can do, but it's teaching us that there are better ways out there. It's just, and I know that this is kind of cliche now, it's not where we work, but it's how we work. And that's what we're trying to become better at. And all of these studies and articles that we read every single week and put out to you guys, that's why we're doing this. It's to help you get these ideas, not just from the articles that are written, because those are studies, those are great, but also give these opinions and ideas that other people can take and apply into their own organization and see if it works, right? And then we learn from that, and then we build a better working world. All right, I'll get off my high horse now. Let's go to the last one right here. So strategies for retention and growth. We might have already discussed this because I kept going on tangents, but to succeed in retaining top talent and supporting career progression in a remote first world, companies need clear career frameworks, robust technologies, Grapevine, and inclusive cultures, Grapevine. And so so the strategies that they talk about here is develop transparent career pathways that apply to both remote and in-office workers, invest in technologies that bridges the gap between remote and in-office teams, ensure remote employees are included in cultural and team building initiatives, other flexible offer flexible work hours, mental health resources, and clear guidelines to help employees manage work-life balance. So this is kind of what we've already been talking about, but it's to take that step. And if you are going to offer flexible work, hybrid work, remote work, in any sense of the word, in any sense of the practice, you cannot just let that person sit over here in an island and feel isolated. Because when they don't have an attachment to the company, to the mission, the vision, the purpose, or have a connection with the people that they work with, they have no real reason to stay. And so at the moment that something becomes difficult, they are going to leave. And so we can't look at remote workers as an afterthought, especially now when the majority, or I won't say the majority, that's a lot, but whenever we have a lot of people working remotely, we have to find ways to adapt and adjust, just like Singapore did. And so let's go ahead and summarize this and we'll close it out. So the shift to remote work in Singapore reflects a global trend towards more flexible work environments, but career progression challenges persist. Companies must invest in technologies and clear career frameworks to ensure remote employees are not overlooked for promotions. Flexibility boosts job satisfaction, but companies must combine it with clear growth opportunities to retain top talent. And the last one here, little selfish plug, Grapevine's platform is built to support both flexibility and career growth, ensuring employees stay connected, engaged, and advancing in their careers. So I hope that this was helpful. We'll attach the article as always. If you like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and share with another Future of Work pioneer or someone in your circle that just isn't over the edge on the future of work just yet. Let's continue to make this movement because it's bigger than remote work. It's bigger than flexible work. It is changing the way that we can work, how we work, and making sure that people actually can enjoy life, but still find purpose in what they do. And it's just the best of both worlds. And we're trying to help that become a reality with our platform, Grapevine. So check it out if you haven't. You can sign up for free for 30 days. Check the link in the comments. But thanks so much for watching this week's Future of Work Weekly Report, and we will see you next week.